snowstorm occurs. The reason we would do this is, or the purpose of a brine is to keep the snow from sticking to the pavement so that it's a little bit easier to plow and it's a little bit easier to move around. So the second phase, if we have some isolated icing conditions, we're going to hit the spot location, bridges, intersections, hills, steep inclines. We have a trouble spot route, and as well as our transfer station. This typically takes 9 personnel, 9 salt spreaders, and 1 front end loader. When we have streets becoming icy and slippery, we do a full-scale salting along the full network, starting with connecting highways, arterial streets, collector streets, hills, and trouble spots. After that, we do go into the local areas for, we don't salt all of the streets in the local areas. We salt approaches to intersections, hills, and curves. And that operation is also 9 spreaders and 1 front unloader. Moving into phase 3, that's if we're going to be getting 3 inches of snow accumulation or more. We do not drop blades until it's predicted for 3 inches of snow or more. So up until that point, we're doing salting operations. Once we know it's going to be 3 inches or more, we'll drop blades and we'll start moving forward to the plowing operation. Among the main network, which once again is connecting highways, arterial streets, collectors, and hills. We will use typically 26 plowing units. We'll plow in tandem, and we've got assigned to 10 routes on the mains itself. Typically, a bare minimum of people in this scenario would be 21 people. It's largely dependent upon if we have people on vacation or out on FMLA or workman's compensation or what have you. So the bare minimum is 21. And but the basic principle is to have 26 operators out on the roads. So for local, for a full scale, we'll have 29 units on the bare pavements, and then we'll widen the streets to full width on the mains, and we'll get as soon as those mains are finished, we assign trucks out to the 28 local residential districts, as we call them. And once again, the goal for all these is after the cessation, 24 hours after the cessation of snowfall, that these things are plowed to the level of service that we've had here in the snow and ice manual. And the last phase is snow removal, and this phase only occurs in metered and business districts, connecting highways. And if you've seen, we have a few very, very large snow blowers, if you will, and we work against traffic. If you've ever seen that, I highly recommend you take a look at it. It's a pretty impressive operation, but it's in those areas where in the downtown 6th Street, 7th Street business districts, where we need to actually remove the snow to clear more room for folks to park.
YouTube apparently has gone off on our channel. Can you check with them and see if they videos projected?
All right. Can somebody go back there and find out about? You can continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So once again, we were talking about the snow removal portion, and that is, we actually blow the snow into our 5-yard dump trucks and move it down to a location where we will let it melt and then clean it up later. Typically down here, right by the stone piles off of Water Street here is where we're taking it. So that's the 4 phases. I can get into more specifics, but I think that that outlines the basic operational standards by which we move trucks and take care of snow and ice operations. Open to any questions.
We got hit, I think, twice within a few days. And so if you could give us a brief overview of that operation and then the challenges that were faced by the department.
Well, specifically the last I'll start with the last operation. The last operation was a duration of, Scotty, was about 24 hours. So it snowed for about 24 hours in the last operation. We ran a 41-hour continuous operation. The challenge is, number one, especially in the local areas when you're not plowing to bare pavement and we're salting areas in the districts that are just intersections, hills, and curves. When you have a freezing event that occurs right after it, that definitely makes things challenging. So we could have gone out and salted again. It would have been fruitless because salt doesn't do anything below 15 degrees. So just for your knowledge and edification, to go out and salt after a 15 degree, or during that type of temperature, anything below 15 degrees, salt wouldn't have helped. It would just have done nothing and been a waste of money at that point. So at that point, we didn't really have anything we could do other than wait for it to warm up a little bit. And once it did, we did get out in those districts and salt a little bit more.
Okay, I will, if the alderman would hit their button so I could turn your mic on. Alderman Land, hold on. Oops, oh yeah, you're good.
Hello?
You're good.
Oh, okay. Thank you for, I know it's a difficult operation that you have to go through, but my question is this: I know that the weather didn't cooperate with us and the last leaf pile was not collected because the snow came. Is there a plan to pick up these leaves now that there's no snow there? Are we just going to have another problem if we get snow, because then they plowed them in front of people's driveways and there were ice piles, and then one of my constituents even got cited by code enforcement to clear the leaves that weren't even hers.
Well, yes, so before the first snow hit, where we got the big 12-inch snow, we got through areas A, B, C, and D. We're in area E right now with a vacuum truck. We're going to get area E. But all of our equipment now has been changed over. So the reason why we have things timed the way we have them is because we do have to do a changeover from leaf collection to, we change all of our end loaders to now rolling plows. So we can pick up maybe some spotty addresses, but they can always take it to Pearl Street, or they can wait until spring pickup. It will come back through again. We'll do a whole new, another citywide effort, which we normally do in spring. That's just the reality of the situation and how we operate. So it might give you some clarification in terms of why we have leaf collection on the dates we have it, because we have to make a changeover at some point to snow and ice operations. So. But we do recognize that area E did not get hit. We did not get that area before things piled up on us in terms of snow. So we are in that area right now. Scotty, if you could confirm, we are in that area right now doing a leaf pickup.
Just a reminder that first week in December, they were going to cut off leaf removal, but we got our first significant snow event in November, because I had some constituents, could you get over to my neighborhood? I had it on the list, and then boom, we got hit with that snowstorm.
Yeah, that's right. And
Anything
then,
else, Alderman Land?
I do have another question now. I know you do the main arterials first. How many times you do it before you start the side streets?
We don't start the side streets until we know that the mains are clear of snow and ice. So we'll stay on the mains until that situation is, until it's a bare pavement situation, and then we'll get into the district areas.
Well, I know that they didn't get to like my area till, I know it was a lot, 9:30 at night, but they don't then plow to the bare road. That's what you said before.
Correct. We do not plow to bare pavement in the local districts.
Because the ice was like that thick on my road, and you could only go like 6 miles an hour down it, and it took a while to melt it.
Right, and we might have those scenarios, and you know, we can certainly, if there's an interest in changing that level of service, we can certainly have that discussion,
Okay.
but it's going to cost some money.
That would be a discussion for another day and a communication into the council for that to happen. Alderman Escada.
Hi, so my concern was kind of, I know you kind of just answered the question a little bit, but I have some constituents kind of live in a cul-de-sac that seems that those areas seem to be forgotten or kind of to the end. I know sometimes it has to do with parking regulations, that there's cars there. What would happen in those cases, or what would be the best number to call in case we have, you know, any related to that? Like I said, it's happened last, I know it was a lot of snow that followed in November, but I don't know if it's right behind, it's close to the Martin Luther King Center. I know there's a little roundabout street, I know they call them cul-de-sacs, that kind of got not paid attention to, and it was just too much snow in that area. What would be the best option for that?
Well, the best option would be call field ops. What is that, 9102, Scotty? So it'd be 262-636-9102 would be the number to call.
Okay.
If you think you have if we missed something. I know there's some streets, there's a little street off of Martin Luther King over there, or maybe it's off of Marquette.
Yeah, I think that's where it's at. I had a constituent call me a few times about that.
Yeah, we just had actually a complaint that, I mean, our garbage trucks can't even get down there because they keep complaining that we're missing their garbage, but we're not. We can't get a garbage truck down the street because of the parked cars. So, which is another challenge. I didn't bring that up, but alternate street side parking, that is a...
Right, yeah, you can't really control it with having, you know, people parking there. I know, for example, off 16th, you guys have salt barrels. Would that be an option maybe to give them in case that street or that area where they're at doesn't get cleaned up very much?
You mean for the residents to do that? Mm-hmm. I would say no, the residents shouldn't be out in the road salting. So if there's an issue, just call us.
Okay.
And we'll take care of it. We got many phone calls, as you can imagine, during the snow and ice effort. So there's that issue. You can call us up. The other issue, like I said, going back to alternate street side parking, I can tell you without hesitation that if alternate street side parking is enforced and made a priority, not just during the winter season, but all year long, because you're not going to change people's behavior unless it's something that's consistent, you will see much better roads in the local areas.
Right,
You will
yeah.
see much better roads. There are a lot of places where we can only plow one lane between the cars. A lot of places. So I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. I'm not saying that alternate street side as parking is ever going to be perfect. But what I will say is you'll see a much cleaner local districts than you see now.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Jorgensen.
Thank you so much. So I guess I would like to go a question around flexibility. So, you know, you'd mentioned about how, you know, once you make the leaf switch over, you know, we wait till the spring. You know, I can tell you, I've gotten quite a few calls on the leaves. In fact, a number of them are, you know, my curb and gutter isn't draining. I'm getting water in the street. There's you know, leaves all around where the storm drain is. since I've gotten those, I've looked into other communities, and quite a few of them, especially I think Milwaukee is a good example, that, you know, they made a post about it of, hey, they're you know, going to try to switch, you know, a limited number of vehicles back, go into the districts to try to pick up leaves, and then if there's snow that's forecasted, they'll have to switch back and pause that, but they know that there's a lot of leaves that didn't get picked up just because with the changing weather patterns that we have, leaves seem to be falling later and snow is happening earlier. Do we have anything in here about flexibility when it comes to those kinds of things, or is it truly just we draw the line and we wait till spring?
Well, there's nothing in the snow and ice manual about leaf collection, but well, I can tell you what we do is we have dates that we put out there for leaf collection for each area. Those areas we generally do, we don't advertise it, but we do generally do another round through the city. And we did do that this time. Did we do that, Scotty? This is Scott Salinas, our superintendent of public works. Yeah, so this time we did get hindered by the snow. So normally we do an extra, maybe not assign full crews to it. We normally do an extra run through each area after those dates are done. Now this time we got caught up from, I think this year is a little bit of an anomaly in that we got the snow early. So typically we will do that. So yes, I mean, we are flexible in terms of as far as that stuff goes.
I feel like as time goes on, this may start to be less of an anomaly and more of, you know, with global warming, climate change that we have. You know, I've noticed that the leaves seem to fall a little bit later. Snow maybe comes earlier. I mean, what was it, a couple years ago we had snow on Halloween even. And so, you know, has there been any look into of, you know, is there something that we have a truck or there is a truck or we could acquire something that's easier to switch back and forth, or is there another vehicle that, you know, we could look into that provides a little bit of flexibility, so if there is a situation where there's a couple streets in my district that I could you know, share with you of, if you drive down it, there's, you know, leaf piles that are up to your knees in some areas where they just kind of keep getting tossed around as alder land put, you know, from driveway to driveway every time it snows. And so, you know, maybe it's not a full district-wide pickup, but if there's these concentrated areas where maybe, they were in my backyard, so it didn't really impact the street. My neighbor's tree had every single one of its leaves until that big snowstorm, and they all fell at once. I think it's a ginkgo, it's whatever makes the really stinky fruit. So they all fell at once, and it, you know, was just a blanket of leaves. If we get one of those in a neighborhood, I could imagine that street might have a bit of an issue if there's a huge amount of leaves all at once.
Well, we'll continually evaluate that. You know, if there's some kind of weather trend that's forcing us to do something different, we're going to do something different. You know, so it's not rigid, but if there's a trend in the weather that we're seeing where we're starting to get more snow in November and some of these dates aren't working out, we might have to make a change, and we can always do that. That's not something we're opposed to at all. Something we're always thinking about. I think Scott in operations is always thinking about, you know, if we've got a trend and we see the weather's doing something, and then, you know, more typically, then we'll adjust fire and handle it.
Yeah, and let me know if that's a communication you'd need to start that or whatever it would be. But I feel like, you know, evaluating if there's, you know, a heavier duty street sweeper that's able to kind of come back and do, because I get it, it's harder once they're kind of matted and wet, and it's not the same as picking up dry leaves. So whatever it would be, I think that would be worth it. And then continuing the topic of flexibility. So the way I understand it is we focus on the main roads to keep them clear. But weather doesn't always follow a similar pattern. I think that the big snowstorm we got was an example where a few times there's kind of a lull in the action where, you know, it would let up for a little bit. The snow wasn't coming down as hard as fast as it was. Is there ever a situation where, you know, if a snowplow driver is out and they're plowing one of the main roads and it's already bare pavement, what are they supposed to do? Is there a plan for how that's handled? You know, if I'm on Melvin and I'm plowing it and my plow's already on bare pavement, I've already been through and there's kind of this weird little lull. We know there's going to be more though by the forecast, but at that moment it's clear. What would they do?
Scotty, you want to take a stab at that one?
Oh, I'm sorry, let me figure out. Is that the mayor or the city attorney?
Administrator. Sorry now, there it goes.
Test, okay. So those situations, each one of our main routes takes approximately 4 to 5 hours to plow from start to finish. So if we encounter one of those lulls, sure, a street or two may be down to bare pavement, but there will be streets on the backside of that route that still need the attention. Now, if we get to the end of that route completely and everything is down to bare pavement, we will have our salters going back through that to salt it, make sure it stays at bare pavement. Now, depending on what the weather does look like, if there's a lull, if there's more going to come at us, we'll still be on standby to go back and start those streets again once it starts to accumulate. The only thing we don't want to do is try to run into the local areas, local streets, start that, and then a big band comes back around and gets us. So now we lose everything we started in the local districts, and I'm playing catch up with the main district, with the main streets now.
And I hear that. However, on the flip side, you know, I think it's good to maybe make some comparisons to other areas. I know that, you know, to use Milwaukee as another example, they shared the other way of, hey, there's a lull, we're going to try to get into the neighborhoods. As soon as it starts up again, we're going to have to switch back to the main roads, but to try to clear some of the neighborhoods. Because there was, unfortunately, on that snowstorm, and I know that one was a really, really long one. It went for a while. But getting out of the neighborhood to one of the main roads was at times extremely challenging. I mean, I got a call from a constituent where she had to go to the hospital and her car got stuck because it was just such a large amount of snow that hadn't been touched on any of the side roads. And it looks like there have been other communities that have been able to do that, where they, you know, maybe filter it in and they go until the band comes, or they you know, or it's about to be there, whatever it looks like. But having that flexibility of trying to, best we can, open up at least some of the neighborhoods to be able to get to the main roads is something that I think is very worthwhile.
I think one other thing to consider, like I said, is we can go and we can do whatever you want. We can go into to local areas sooner, but keep in mind, one of the reasons why we do the mains and we get those clear is we need emergency vehicles, we need buses to be able to get around the city. So that's always been our main focus, moving in terms of any snow and ice operation. And any snow and ice operation is dynamic, it's asymmetric. There's different things going on in different parts of the city. So you know, that would be an on the fly call by one of our supervisors during a snow event to divert a truck off the mains and into a local area. So like I said, a big reason for why we concentrate on those mains so heavily before we get into the locals is so those emergency vehicles and buses can get around the city.
And the reason I just feel like there may be something here, I feel like I've got a unique experience of my hometown at Janesville. I served on that city council, and I could probably count the number of snow complaints I got on one hand for the years that I was on it. To count the number of complaints and calls for service that I've gotten while I've served on the Racine Council, I think I need my hands, your hands, the audience hands, and even then we'd probably run out. I mean, I don't think I got off the phone on that Sunday with that large snowstorm. It started up around 8 a.m. and I don't think I got my last phone call until probably 7:30, 8 o'clock at night of people saying, look, I haven't been able to leave my house all weekend. That was the one where they tried to go to the hospital and their car got stuck. You know, it felt like if there was an opportunity to try to slip in some neighborhoods, that would have been a possibility.
Well, I would certainly agree with you. We could, Scott and his crew are professionals. I would let them make those decisions as needed. You mentioned Janesville, that weekend where it got super cold out right after that snow event. I took a ride through Madison, Janesville, Kenosha, Milwaukee, West Dallas, Oak Creek. Every single one of them, the local roads were the same as ours. So it wasn't like we were unique in this thing. There was a lot of everybody was experiencing issues with ice during that time.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that one was a good example of, you know, we were maybe all on par. There was one of the other ones where we had, it was that Saturday or Sunday where it was the day before. I actually went and we had met my parents in one of the outer suburbs of Milwaukee, and when we took a drive, we went through the suburbs of Milwaukee, and that was where an example of where the neighborhoods did look different. You know, getting off the highway in South Milwaukee and even Milwaukee, the interior neighborhoods seemed much more passable than we were. In fact, by the time we got home that day, the plow still hadn't come down the street that I've been on, and even through the district for the most part. And so it does seem like there's a bit of a consistency of, you know, the number of calls we're getting. And another thing that is a very unique thing is the vast majority, I'll say 2/3, point to about 5 years ago that there was a shift maybe on, about 5 years ago, something happened, they don't know what, but since then they've noticed that their neighborhood's gotten slower to be plowed out. I don't know if there's any changes we've made in the last 5 years that could be pointed to, you know, whether it's budget or...
No, what I can say is this manual, the snow and ice manual, is a reflection of what the Common Council has appropriated us to do. So if in fact you'd like us to get into the local areas a little bit more and a little bit more often, we're glad to do that. And I'll send you a number for what that would require.
Okay, yeah, I think that'd be good to look at that, and you know, see what that would cost for us. I mean, you know, not to point back to Janesville, but Janesville is about 10,000 less people than we have and double the square miles. So I'd want to see, you know, the budget that would be proposed to get into the neighborhoods a little bit faster versus what, you know, what I know firsthand to have been able to be accomplished there, would be, you know, a worthwhile discussion. And back to the 5-year thing, has there been any changes to the budget that you feel directly relates to why maybe residents in the last 5 years would see a decrease of speed of plowing?
No, I mean, there's not been a huge change in the budget. There's been a fairly significant change in the level of experience of our drivers. I think over the past 5 years, we lost over 300 years of experience in our drivers. Now and 50 years experience in supervisory staff. So that's, you know, where we have 10 or 12 people right now that have never plowed a road. So we have a lot of inexperienced drivers out there. These first couple of snowstorms are really good for them in terms of an experiential situation. So in that area, yes, we have some inexperienced drivers as compared to 5 years ago, and we have less staff. I mean, we've lost 20%, over 20% of our staff in the last 20 years. So, from that standpoint, we just don't have as many people. So when I say to you that if you want to get into the local areas sooner, we can do that, but understand that there is a dollar amount that's going to be associated with that, and I'm glad to provide it. I have a ballpark. We did some analysis for this the Public Works and Services Committee a few weeks ago. One of it was plowing around all the schools in the city of Racine to bare pavement within a 3-block radius. $3 million. That's what you're looking at. So, and if you want to get to bare pavement throughout, you're looking at $5 million. So these are big numbers. So, and I also have some numbers in terms of you know, if you want to get into, to these districts sooner. Like, for instance, that second snowstorm that we had that lasted over 24 hours, we didn't get into districts until late. We still met the metrics, our level of service in this, but we didn't get into districts until late because it kept snowing for so long. So every snowstorm is just a little bit different. I've often been asked what a typical snowstorm is, and well, there really is no typical snowstorm. Things we look at in public works are outside air temperature, pavement temperature, moisture content, all these different things that affect any kind of plowing operation that Scott and his people have to make decisions about kind of in the moment. We can make decisions based on what Murray Truttle, which is our weather consultant, tells us. But it's like if you're in the Army and you make a good plan, after the first shot that's fired, it's pretty much a whole different plan after that. So that's kind of how our guys operate. That's how we have to operate because things change so often.
Yeah, what is it, the Mike Tyson quote of everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. I get it, but I do think it'd be good to get those numbers, and I think it'd be good to get the bare pavement one as well as just in general ways that we could look at trying to get into neighborhoods sooner.
Right. I would ask that if you want those numbers, specifically tell me what you're asking for. How many trucks do you want in the districts? When do you want them in the districts? How do you want them to plow? So the issue of just, well, if we say, well, how do we do it better? Define better. So if you would like those numbers, please be specific about what you're asking for, and I'll be glad to get those numbers for you.
Yeah, and so as far as how many trucks or how many people, I don't know if I'm going to be the right one to be able to ask that because, frankly, I'm by no means a snowplow expert.
Well, so they're just timing or something like that. Do you want to pull trucks off of the do you want to pull trucks off of the mains halfway through a snowstorm to jump into the local areas? Something that gives me some parameters by which I can actually measure what the actual cost is going to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I can try to do my darndest to get you some specifics of that. But once again, as far as when they get pulled off of the mains, I can try to articulate that. I think from my standpoint, as well as, and I don't want to speak for the other alders on this, but I know I've talked with some alders, and they've even shared the story of, I've never gotten as many calls for complaints as I've gotten recently. Something has changed, or something is different, or that's where I think from our standpoint, we're hearing from the community. I mean, I just got a call in preparation of this. She was going to try to make it, but she wasn't able to. She moved from Kenosha a year ago, and she said, I would have never moved here if I would have realized that local streets don't get plowed out until the very end, where I don't leave your house until the snowstorm is all the way over, and then within 24 hours of that, that's the best we can do. And I think that, to your point, each one's unique. I think that long snowstorm was a bit of an anomaly, but that's where if there's things we can learn from that, if there's things that we can try to implement, whether it's internally we look at that, or we can maybe get some roundtables with Kenosha or other mid-sized cities in Wisconsin of other best practices that others are learning, because we're not unique in the sense that weather is different. I mean, was it 50 degrees today in the beginning of January? It's changing, it's different. Climate change is here. And so the snow and ice manual has been largely very consistent. I think you'd share, was it 30 years was the time frame you said it was pretty consistent?
Probably longer than that. It's been changed. There's been minor changes to it, when a street gets vacated or something like that,
right.
So, but the level of service has not changed. The only thing the biggest things that have changed for us is experience of workforce and loss of workforce. So, to deny that those things don't affect a level of service or a timing of operations it certainly does affect it. So, but we've not gotten into a situation where we've missed what or we've exceeded the metrics in the snow and ice manual. We've bet it every single time.
Alderman, perhaps you've mentioned both Janesville and Kenosha having done a better job than Racine in the last snowstorm. You could maybe get a copy of their policies and see where their policies differ from ours, and maybe that would be a starting point for further discussion on this issue.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to, whether it's a breakout of, maybe we get it to the DPW leadership and they review it and we all review it of maybe not at a committee meeting, but a breakout of, are there any best practices? We can even maybe give some calls if somebody is available from Kenosha to come up and join us for that discussion.
We have Kenosha's seasonal operations manual.
Okay.
Yes.
And what would you say the key differences are between our manual and their manual?
The key difference is there is really no key difference. They do the mains before they go into the local areas. That's the prioritization that they have. That's the same priorities that we have. So their priorities are the same as ours. Right.
So, but functionally, is it a bigger budget? Do they have more trucks? Do they have more staff? Do they have, what would be a reason that, they're, someone who recently moved here from Kenosha may go, oh my goodness, this is totally different. You feel like there's not any functional differences?
Are they? I mean, I'd have to drive every street during a snowstorm in Kenosha to understand if they're significantly different as to what they're doing than what we're doing.
I guess I'm getting at that.
If the comparison to Kenosha is going to be made, then we need to know exactly what their streets look like, their local streets, every one of them, as compared with ours in any given snowstorm. And we don't know that right now.
Sure, and so that's where, I'd thrown out the offer of maybe we can give a call and see if they'd join us for a joint meeting of, we can see what their metrics were, we can discuss with them of, when, and that long snowstorm, at one point did they break off of the mains to go into the neighborhoods versus when we did? Was there timing difference?
Here's what I will say, is that if you want a higher level of service, it requires budget dollars. I'm glad to provide those budget dollars. There's going to be trade-offs. If you want to come off the mains and do something else, then the mains are going to get hit a little bit harder. So then the emergency vehicles might not be able to get around. Then buses may not be able to run their schedules the way they should. So any decisions that you as a body make regarding the city's snow and ice policy, there are going to be trade-offs and it's going to cost money. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I can absolutely understand that there'd be...
I mean, snow and ice operations are extremely complicated things, especially with the changing weather and different events, different weather patterns. So if the desire is to have some type of different level of service, which is what I think you're asking, then we need to have a discussion about budget dollars and what exactly the change in level of service should be.
Yeah, I mean, I as far as the level of service goes, I would like to know, and I can submit the request for it of, bare pavement citywide. I said close to $5 million. I think it'd be good to get that. But just in general, though, I mean, the idea that the neighborhoods aren't able to be touched until that, basically it stops and they're clear and we're able to go into the neighborhoods. Milwaukee made a post of it, that they broke off and they switched. I'd like to know functionally what was the difference there. Did they have more? Did they have a higher level of staff? Do they have, those are the things that I think are worth it to be reviewing to see how we can do better. I mean, you'd mentioned the weather as why it's challenging. We've also talked about a reduction in headcount. So if we're still doing the same routes, the snow and ice manual hasn't been really functionally changed in over 30 years, and we've done a headcount reduction. Are there trade-offs we may need to make? Is there a review we need to be doing on it to, are there some differences of maybe there is the ability to pull back on the main slightly to free that up? I don't have that answer, but I'm not really seeing an open discussion here. From my standpoint, I'm just sharing and lifting up the concerns of my constituents of, they're saying that this is really frustrating and they're having a hard time with how we're handling snow pickup. and snow plowing. And so it's not a level of blame. It's not that,
Oh, no, there's no level of blame.
Yeah,
I'm just simply saying that this is what our priorities are. This is what they have been. This book has been tried and true. I'm not saying it can't change. I'm not saying that routes can't be changed. What I am saying is there are real budget dollar effects here. And as long as you're willing to hear those budget dollars, then that's fine. We can go down those roads. But the budget dollars are going to be significant. Let's just say, for instance, you want us to drop blades at 2 inches instead of 3 inches. Well, guess what? You just increased your equipment maintenance budget quite a bit because we're going to destroy a lot of plow blades, a lot of hydraulic hoses, a lot of other things. So there's a lot of things that go into a snow and ice operation, not just the plows on the road. It's the equipment maintenance people. It's the fuel. If you want to get us into the if you want to do some more plowing in the local districts, that's more fuel. That's more maintenance. That's more money. So I'm glad to have a discussion about routes and about getting into districts earlier. But I'd like to know exactly what it has to be. It has to be an open discussion, and it has to be a discussion about how do you want to proceed so I can apply a budget number to it. It can't just be, well, we need to do a better job.
We seem to be spinning our wheels here, and if we could bring it back to the discussion on hand, which was initially an overview of the snow policy manual, obviously because we're not that far removed, and what precipitated this discussion was the snow event. What was the date of that snow event again?
Oh, I'm not sure. Do you remember? What I will say is that...
Was it November 10th, or was there one in December?
Yeah. One thing to keep in mind, too, Mr. Chairman, is over the past 15, 20 years, we've averaged 23 inches of snow. We've already eclipsed that. I think we're probably in the 32 to 36 inch range before we've even gotten halfway through snow and ice season. So
Well,
there's also a lot. We're getting more snow than I think a lot of people are used to through the years.
the point I want to make, when we're comparing us to other communities, we need to be careful because we got hit with a lake effect snow. Did Janesville have the same amount of snow that we did on November 10th? And I don't think they did.
What I'm trying to say, Mr. Chairman, is that's the part that's hard. Comparing yourself to another community. Milwaukee's a community of over 800,000 people. You know, Kenosha is probably the closest to us, but even from Kenosha to Racine, there can be different snow conditions. Mm-hmm. So it's a tough comparison, and you can compare budgets, you can compare the amount of people, but it's a lot more complex than one would think just by looking at it. Than one would think. It's just a lot more complicated.
Alderman Jorgensen, I know that you have some specific areas that you've mentioned to me in the past. I think what the appropriate action would be is if you have specific streets, the one where the person couldn't get to the hospital, that sort of thing, is sitting down with DPW and asking them to review the timeline or whatever of when they got to those streets, why they didn't, and then you had some other specific examples, talk to them about that. You have some ideas of ways that maybe we could do things a little bit more efficiently. You've mentioned flexibility and stuff like that, and I would encourage you to come up with a few concrete, tangible action items that we might be able to implement as a council and bring those back in the form of a communication to the council for referral to this committee, and they will be given full consideration. I would request, though, that you attempt to work with staff on budgeting numbers and things like that, so that you have that before sending in the communication, because what often happens here is we'll get a request for something, staff hasn't had a chance to look at the budget items, and then we end up having to defer it and prolonging the process. So I would like whatever changes are proposed or made, that process be as efficient as possible for the elders that are proposing it, so that we're not doing this back and forth and having to come to multiple meetings to only find out that it's deferred because all the information isn't there yet. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up this evening?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, what those next steps are. I mean, if in order to solve this problem, I've got to go, take some crash courses on how to come up with a concrete plan, I can do that. I would much prefer that we work together, and, I can share the examples and feedback that we're getting. I would think that the department would want to go and review it of, are there efficiencies, are there things we can do, and if there's some value or some, monetary value on those ones, we can put numbers to it. If it's training, hey, if we had an extra $15,000, to pay for overtime to send our guys out in the summer to do extra training, for overtime for training, whatever it would be, I'm open. Anything is on the table with me to put our heads together to try to get to a somewhat of an improvement. It doesn't need to get better overnight. It doesn't need to be,
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think I'd be glad to talk with you offline and go over the very specific and detailed things that we need to talk about. As a first step in terms of understanding our operation, I would highly recommend for anybody in this committee to do a ride along with our drivers. Not just for 2 hours, but for an entire shift. Don't deny yourself the ability to understand what these guys have to go through driving 16 hours. And you can see what's going to happen on local roads when there's people aren't paying attention to alternate street side parking, and how these guys have to navigate that. That would be the first step to really gaining an understanding of what we do, how we do it. And I'm glad to set that up with anybody.
I'd love to do a ride along if I can get on the list. Once again, you can't really schedule it, but
Yeah, I'd have to kind of reach out and say, hey.
Right, I'd love to get on the list. I did it in Janesville and found it very, very informative and helpful of getting to see firsthand, getting to feel when you hit a manhole, it's raised up above, it rattles the fillings in your teeth. And so, yeah, I'd love that, as well as, I don't want to take up too much more time, but we did talk about alternate street parking. Do we have it in place where if a driver has, a street that they're seeing, like, look, I can only do one lane through here as I'm going through here because no one's following alternate street parking, are they able to radio in to like a dispatcher or somebody to come back out, whether it's a CSO or someone to try to bust up a clump of wrong side parkers?
No, so what we'll generally do if one of our big 8-foot plows can't get down, get anything to the curb with alternate side parking being a hindrance there, is they'll do what they can to get down it, best they can. Then we will send a smaller 2-yard truck with a much smaller size blade down there to try to get it open up best we can without causing any damage.
And so, but as far as like getting the offenders here, off the road, is there a tow schedule, or do you call it into the police department to get taken? And maybe that's something that we put a bookmark in that we talk on offline, of trying to come up with some policy where you can radio back into dispatch, then that can get to the police department and they can send a CSO to tag it and then get it marked for tow or whatever it is. Because it makes your job, I've been down some narrow streets on the ride-alongs that I've done, and it makes it, I don't know how you do it, going through especially some of our narrow streets, where if both sides are parking on it, it makes it incredibly hard. So we need to be able to get you in a position where you can do your job. And I'd have to imagine that having the smaller plow come back, that adds cost and time and takes it away from being able to get the rest of the roads opened up. So it sounds like through the discussion we've had tonight, we'll talk offline of are there any improvements we can do? Maybe look at some comparisons of other cities, not of who did better, but are there any best practices, as well as we'll talk offline on how do we get you the assistance that you need with the alternate street parking offenders with the police department, and then we'll maybe come back to the committee with those 3 kind of action items of things we've come up with.
That sounds reasonable. Thank you, Alderman Jorgensen.
Thank you so much for letting me crash the party here tonight and taking over a little bit. And I appreciate all three of you coming in to talk tonight on this. And I look forward to doing a ride along and let me know when works to have an offline discussion on these three things. And happy to be available whenever we need to.
I think you'd be a great candidate
Great,
for
thank
this
you.
committee.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I found I've attended quite a few public works meetings, and I enjoyed it every time.
All right, thank you. Alderman Davis, you have been patient. Did you still have something?
Yes, thank you. I'm just giving a pause. Just a pause. This is right. I have a question for you all regarding salting. I read in here in the manual that you sought the stop and yield sign areas and the approaches for the intersections. Is there any reason, or can you tell me the reasoning behind not going down the local streets to salt?
That's largely budgetary, so, we'd have to salt another 178 miles of roads, so that's where that's coming from. So we're just doing, like you said, the approaches to intersections, hills and, curves.
Okay. And I asked that question because racing folks have experienced, the thick ice and whatnot on the local streets. So I'm just trying to troubleshoot on ways. Okay, so that's something we can look into for the next budget and seeing if we need to add more salt. Question, and the briner only goes down the main, so the brining wouldn't even be an option on the local streets?
I don't think we do, we haven't
Do you
brined those local, we do not brine the local streets, just the mains.
Just the main
Yes.
streets, okay. So looking into budget for salting. Okay. Just a comment here. I've heard it mentioned a bunch about the alternate side parking being an issue. Yes, it is. And what I've noticed is that due to an increase in housing costs, folks are doubling up in homes. And so there's an increase of vehicles that are on the streets. When I'm walking my pub Coco, folks have their cars in the driveways, in the garages, and on the streets. So it's not a DPW issue. It's a whole economy issue with the vehicle pieces. So trying to figure out ways that, not you all, but overall, on ways that we can try to have vehicles to go so that you can come through and clear the street as much as you can. But my main thing is trying to get, hopefully, some additional dollars on the budget for the salting, because that issue was a large issue. Well, it was ice rinks, and we know it was some of it was due to the snow and then the cold weather and not being able to throw the salt. And I do recognize that you have lost years of experience because the plowers, I don't know their faces, and some of the plowers I watched, or I knew them from growing up, from working at DPW, and you have, new hands on deck. So I believe that after a few more snowstorms and an opportunity for the new drivers, they will get a little better and know how to whip and wheel like the previous folks were. So that's all.
I will say, just as some background, we average about 4,500 tons of salt a year. So with this current snow and ice operation that we do, so I can't tell you off the top of my head what it's going to take to salt all the mains, but it's going to be probably more than double. Would you say, Scotty? Yeah.
Over, maybe not last year, but the previous years, we didn't have as many events, so we were able to we had some salt left over, and that has since changed within the recent years with the weather events?
It hasn't changed a whole lot, right, Scott? I mean, we do just about the same, I think 27 or 28 salting operations a year on average, and that hasn't changed a whole lot. It's just when we actually do a full-scale operation with snow and plows, that's significantly different through the years because of how much snow we get. But generally, if we're not getting more than 2.5, 3 inches, we're just doing a salting operation. We're not doing a plowing operation.
Yeah, last year we had 28 Main Street salting events. 28 Main Street salting events in winter of 24, 25.
Thank you. And just one more question. I was looking through the manual, I was trying to find, how are the corners handled as far as like the crosswalks? I see that it says somewhere, if manpower is available, there's a shovel of the crosswalks. But what I witnessed this past, not this event, but the huge event, was a lot of the crossings there was nowhere for the snow to go, and the snow was blocking the crosswalk. How is that normally handled so that you can walk across the street?
So
Who
if it's
clears
on a
those?
residential block, it is the responsibility of the property owner of the corner that has abutting that sidewalk, is their responsibility to clear. Our responsibilities for crosswalks are anything that, crosswalks that intersect. So if we were to like throw, for example, if anyone's familiar with Douglas and Gould, that intersection there, if you're crossing right by the Gus's Giro, right there into that little traffic island, that's what we clear out to allow traffic to go different ways.
But the residential crosswalks, it's
That are on the sidewalk, right?
the residents should be clearing those crosswalks as well when they're clearing out the sidewalks.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Harmon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, administration guys. Thank you guys for coming and just kind of walking us through this. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. I also appreciate the suggestion of a ride-along. I really appreciate that. I think I'm going to take you up on that offer too, but I don't know, not no 16 hours worth. But anyway.
Don't deny yourself.
But anyways. So we're talking about kind of a different level of service because there's been quite a few complaints, especially the last few years from constituents. And I can talk about some of the complaints that I've gotten from constituents, but I'm actually going to talk about my own complaint. I live in Ward 36. I live out in Georgetown. So the streets are very kind of jigsawy. All right, this last snowstorm, and I hate to say this publicly, but the street that I live on was clear. Thank you. It was perfect. It was beautiful, down to the pavement and everything. However, when I went out to the rest of Georgetown, it was bumpy, ice froze up. It was horrible. My tires and shocks, it was horrible. And because I have a bad back, that was the main issue. When I was driving, it would constantly just jerk my back. It really was a bad issue. So, I know that you say that there is a special issue when it comes to salting salting hills. Victorian Drive and Southwood Drive are hills. And while we have salt up at the top of the hill, if UPS, if Amazon come up from the bottom of the hill, they always get stuck. They always get stuck. They would then have to walk up to the hill to get the salt, bring it back down the hill, pour all of this salt so that they can try to either back up or go back down the hill. I have 3 inches of salt right out in front of my yard, in the street, not in my yard, in the street where that actually had to happen. So some of the better, different level of service. New staff, there has to be some type of training. If there's 25 people who have never plowed a snow, there has to be some type of training, better training before the snow, because there's a big issue. Better hiring maybe, because you hire 25 people who don't know nothing about ever. I don't know, that's not my expertise. But I'm just throwing out some things that I wrote down when we talk about different level of service. Some forecasting, seeing what is plan on happening 3 days from now, some type of forecasting. We have traffic studies that look at things beforehand or to try to figure out some things so that we can better serve the community. Some type of forecasting, some type of performance analysis of the staff and when they do it, any feedback or something. Those are some possible different levels of services that could assist with it. I do thank you for your hard work. I really, really do. But when it's really, really bumpy and because of car or whatever the reasons are, if someone could think to go back, we can't do this street because of these cars, let's circle back around before it gets too, I don't know, because that's not my job. But I can tell you that out in Georgetown this last December, this last one, it was absolutely horrible. But because I was looking at my street, I was emailing my constituents and saying, it's not that bad. They said, Alderman, get off your butt and go around. And then I did. And then I had to reply and say, yeah, it's not the same throughout Georgetown. So that's all that I wanted to say, some possible solutions for different levels of service, whether it helps or not. I do know that it's not easy, but I did just want to make those comments.
Alderman, thank you for your comments. You gave staff something to chew on. And
one thing I will say is if you're seeing an area, like a specific area on a hill or a curve where people are legitimately getting stuck all the time, please let me know. I will add it to this book. So we're glad to take those suggestions and make changes for you folks.
And once again, for any alderman, if there's specific areas that you need looked at, I know occasionally I would email or text staff too because of a constituent concern or complaint. And so that sooner the better, keeping in mind that Scott and the rest of them have their hands full, but they've always been as responsive as they can be. Sometimes the answer isn't what I want, but at least they're responsive to it, and I know they've done the best that they can at times to address the situation. So we've had a good lengthy discussion. If there is no other discussion, a motion to receive and file would be in order.
Motion to receive and file.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none opposed, and the motion carries. Our next item is 1296-25, communication on behalf of the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Department, submitting a final payment for contract 2025-108- Worcester Museum renovation, Rosh Construction. The work has been completed. Staff recommendation is that it be accepted and final payment authorized for the total contract amount of $258,895. Final payment to include retainage. What is the... There's a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Next item is 1314-25, communication on behalf of the Transit Department's, that's why he's here, submitting final payment for contract 2024-209, Transit Center Renovations, KPH Construction Corporation. Staff recommendation is the work has been completed. and that we accepted and final payment authorized for the total contract amount of $1,520,332. Final payment to include retainage. All right, multiple moves to approve and seconds. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, any opposed? Then that motion carries. Next item is 1288-25, communication on behalf of the Department of Public Works submitting change order number 1 to contract 2025-125 CDBG Rapids Drive Lighting Pro Electric Contractors. Staff recommendation is that the change order number 1 be approved in the amount of $2,918.47. Funding is available in the account. There's a motion to approve. Is there a second? And a second. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none. Any opposed? Then the motion carries. Item 1289-25, communication on behalf of the Department of Public Works submitting final payment for 2025-125-CDBG Rapids Drive Lighting Pro Electric Contractors. The work has been completed. Staff recommendation is it be accepted and final payment authorized for a total contract amount of $154,116.09. Final payment to include retainage. There's a motion to approve and a second. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none. Any opposed? Then the motion carries. The next item is 1290-25, communication rescinding resolution 0870-25, amendment 3 to contract 2023-006 with ABM Parking Maintenance Service. Staff recommendation is that it be approved. There's a motion to approve. Is there a second? There's a motion to approve and a second. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, any opposed? Then the motion carries. Next item is 0007-26, communication rescinding resolution 0924-25, amendment 4 to contract 2023-006 with ABM Parking Maintenance Service. Recommendation from staff is that that be approved. There's a motion to approve. Is there a second? There's a motion to approve and a second. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'm going to throw a wrench in this. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Then the motion carries. Item 1306-25, communication on behalf of the Department of Public Works submitting a professional agreement between the City of Racine and Casing and Associates for the demolition of McMinn parking structure located at 1207th Street, Racine. Recommendation is that the committee approve the professional services agreement and direct the Assistant Commissioner of Public Works to sign the agreement between the City of Racine and Casing in the amount of $85,155. Funding is available in the appropriate account. What is the pleasure? There's a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second. There's a motion to approve and a second. Alderman Davis.
Was this, hold on. Was this something that needed to be bid out?
Yes, ma'am. So this is just the design for the professional services agreement, which puts together the plan, specification, and estimates. Then when they're done with that, we'll bid it out as a construction project.
Oh, so this is just the cost of them,
So there's just,
planning how to demolish.
exactly.
It's a very technical endeavor to remove a parking ramp, and therefore the professionals are hired to engineer that and put all the paperwork together so that it can be bid out, and hopefully no mistakes are made, and the bids we get cover everything that could possibly go wrong. Hopefully. Alderman Perez, and then Alderman Harmon. Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Davis, you're...
I didn't say I was
all right.
yet, because I have a follow-up.
You got the floor.
Thank you.
Lower your mic a little bit.
There we go. So this is for this agency to figure out where to put wherever to demo. It costs $85,000?
Yes, ma'am. So they determined, what they do is they put a whole set of engineering plans together. And when they finish those plans, and we then advertise it for bid, and then the contractors bid on the work that's supposed to be done in those plans. Did I answer your question?
It answers my question, but I have more questions that are possibly beyond you, but just trying to understand
In
the more
terms of
scope
work?
of like their work, that number to create the plans to demo, it's just throwing me, so it's nothing.
Oh, what I can tell you is like a good way to think about it, anytime you have a construction project, let's just say, I think this project we estimated at about $1 million total. Think about, a good way to think about what's a good number in my head that would include plans, specification, and estimates. 8 to 10% is, and that's the ballpark we're in here. So, if you're thinking about costs and why it costs 85%, that's a good way to think about professional engineering services. So the engineers aren't doing the demolition work. They're actually designing the plans and specifications to tell a contractor how to actually demolish the building. And those services cost money. So in our case, and typically we're looking at 8 to 10% of a total project cost. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Just one follow-up question, maybe you will be able to answer. Do you know how many hours, how many work hours would be for?
I think it's broken down in there. Let me see if I can find it here.
Oh,
Yeah, 206 hours.
206,
Well, that
oh,
was the prime, I don't know if there's subs on here too.
oh. Thank you. I am complete. Those were my questions.
What happened to the days of the big wrecking ball coming and just knocking a building down or a structure? All right, Alderman Perez.
Why are we turning it down?
That's based on the mayor's direction. He's the one that led the effort to get this in the budget. I will say that it's our oldest ramp, and it's not in good shape, but that's what I can tell you.
Well, I remember that we've invested quite a bit of money into it already from the 10 years that I've been on this committee. Is 10 years enough time for it to disintegrate, that we need to get rid of it completely? Or is it being done with the intention of preventing something going on with the actual McMinn Towers or a public safety issue? Not for the ramp, but for the area.
I would say public safety might be an issue as to why the mayor put this in the budget. I can't say for sure. We're executing his budget.
This was an item we approved in the budget process. If the committee wants to vote it down and get into a broader discussion at the council meeting, I guess that's the prerogative of the committee, but we did approve this as part of the budget meeting, and at the time we were told that the ramp was in a state of disrepair and becoming dangerous, and that it was better to remove it now versus later. That was my recollection of the discussion at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Hit your button, please. Yes, sir.
So, with the intention of removing the ramp, the parking ramp, right?
Yes, sir.
There's nothing planned to put up for parking there? Are we like renewing it and putting a new one in, or are we just taking it out completely?
No, I think not another ramp, but possibly a surface lot. So when they demolish it, it'll just be a flat piece of ground. We'd put some asphalt in there and paint some lines and make it a parking lot, a city parking lot. I think that's the ultimate end game.
Anything else, Alderman? All right, thank you. Alderman Harmon, could you hit your, oh.
Alderman Perez asked the question that I was going to ask.
Okay,
What, after it's demolished, what's the next step?
and that was answered, thank you. Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Roll call, please.
Alder Perez? Alder Davis? Alder Escada? Alder Harmon?
All right, then the motion fails. All right, moving on. This will be called out at the city council meeting. Item 1302-25, communication on behalf of the Department of Public Works requesting a preliminary resolution for paving the following streets. The list is there. If we approve this, a public hearing will be scheduled. And so we are not approving any street pavings now. We are just scheduling a public hearing, and residents will be notified and will be encouraged to come in. So what is the pleasure of the committee? There's a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? Alderman Perez, hit your button, please.
Thanks, sir. So, can we, as a matter of bookkeeping here, is it possible to put what district these streets are in the future?
That comes out when we do the public hearing. That's always on basically the cheat sheet. But yeah, I mean,
You're already gonna do it on one. Can you do it on
Yeah, we
this
can do
one?
that.
yeah.
It'd be a lot easier to mentally figure out where these places are. I appreciate that, thank you.
All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, any opposed? Then the motion carries. The next item is 1301-25, and that is a communication submitting the following alleys to be included in the 2026 public hearing for 2027 construction. Once again, same as before, and I'm assuming,
I do have an edit on there just so you're.
okay,
There's one alley that 16th, 15th, Grange, Fleck, north-south. That alley was reconstructed in 2021. It just was never updated by the engineer and the spreadsheet. So that one is taken off of the list.
okay,
And then the Alder Widener added technically two alleys with the common council last week. She mentioned one, but because there's a road in the middle of that, of her limits, it's basically two alleys, and those are added at the bottom of the Alder's selection,
okay.
or Alderman recommendation.
Duly noted, and once again, I'm assuming that Alderman Perez's recommendation to, in the future, put aldermanic districts on there would be carried forward. What is the committee's pleasure? There's a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, any opposed, and the motion carries. The next item is 1084-25, communication sponsored by Alderman Kelly to have a flashing light system installed on an existing stop sign. Alderman Kelly is on medical leave. I would request that this be deferred on such a time as she would be available to come to a meeting. And also staff was, I think, charged with doing some research on that. I don't know if that was accomplished yet.
As far as research goes, I mean, I talked to Matt Kopechnik, who's a forester. There's only one quadrant that's really obstructed at all. All the other stop signs are 100% visible from, more than safe stopping sight distance. Usually the whole entire block, if not multiple blocks. The one quadrant is the eastbound direction of the intersection. There's trees there that partially block it, but the forester has it on his list that he'll come through, every spring, check it out, trim them if need be. I think the simplest thing to correct this, instead of having a flashing stop sign, is just to put a double back stop sign on the opposite side of the intersection, so at least they have two.
Do we need action?
Reflect back at them.
Do we need action from here? Is that something you can do?
We could just do it.
We can do it, yeah. It's really not
Why don't we trim
not
the,
changing anything ordinance-wise. We're just adding a little safety precaution on one of the stop signs.
why don't we trim the trees and add the backing that you mentioned? then I would say a motion to receive and file would be in order. There's a motion to receive and file. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, any opposed, then the motion carries. So the last item is 1313-25, communication sponsored by Alder Allen requesting to discuss accommodations for individuals with disabilities in alternate parking neighborhoods. She is not here, so I would request that this be deferred unless, Alderman Escada, you had your... Okay. There's a motion to defer and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, then the motion carries. There be no further business for us to do. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.